Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
All right, let's keep this big momentum going. It's 7:06. It's O'Connor and Company. We have a little extra spring in our step this morning there, Mercedes Schlapp.
Because we have a Speaker of the House, or what do we have?
Because we have a Speaker of the House.
Oh, that
exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
And now get to business. Coming up at 7:35, Representative Andy Harris, Congressman of Maryland, will tell us what he expects from this new speaker. 8:05, Superintendent of Schools in Spotsylvania County, Mark Taylor. And then at 8:35, Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform. All right, Mercedes, you're a Virginian, and we are focusing so much on the Virginia elections that are really going on as we speak. Because Virginia has like 45 days of voting or something.
That's right.
Insanity. That's right. But the clock is ticking. It's going to be 2 weeks from now when that is all up, the 7th of November. And joining us now is Keith Elliott. He is running for Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, the Sully District. He wants to give Pat Harity a little bit of company there so that he's not the sole Republican vote. Thanks for joining us, Keith Elliott.
Hey, good morning. Thank you guys for having me and talking some local stuff here for us.
Of course. What do you think? I know that you've been going door to door, you're knocking, you're introducing yourself. What are you hearing as the most important issues facing Fairfax County residents right now?
Well, when I originally got in and just talking to people around the neighborhood and my friends and stuff like that was taxes, right? So there's like a big spending problem originally when I got in, and that was the biggest topic, was the spending of the county. Just keep exercising their right to tax and tax and tax, to spend and spend. So that was the first thing. But locally, there's a lot of land issue things that are going on here in Sully District that in western Fairfax County that came to my attention, that there's a lot of stuff like a data center and other land issues that they're considering to put in here.
And where do you stand on that? Listen, the expansion of data centers, especially in rural areas that had been protected rural areas, we saw it crop up in Prince William County. We know out in the Dulles area, these things have been growing. What is your position on further expansion?
Yeah, well, I have a real estate background, so I do, real estate property management. I've actually gotten into association management, so I'm quite familiar with this. And it's not good to have data centers. These are, 80-foot tall buildings, and the one that they're considering to put here in Chantilly is going to be, they're asking for a variance, so it could be a 101-foot building right next to a community, and that's not right. So a data center, we need the data centers. We need to offset some of the tax base versus our, real estate property tax and car tax. So it'd be great to have these data centers, but only in a commercial zone where they're away from homes and things like that, and not along tributaries that serve a watershed and things like that.
Right. Keith, you talked about taxes. Obviously, we've seen the economy really I love how Bidenomics, and Biden still tries to keep selling the economy. And I'm like, he's so out of touch with where the American people are. Another issue I think that's hit Fairfax County as well is this issue of crime. And the fact is people don't feel safe. Is that what you're also hearing on the ground from your folks when you're, knocking on doors?
100%. And in fact, I was in a community called Green Trails, and I was out there walking, knocking the doors, and somebody had just moved in 2 months before, and their car was ransacked, and they lost $111 out of their car. Jeez. It's just people left their car unlocked, and it was literally 2 days after they had already moved in, and they've been there for about a month. So crime is a big problem, and it's gonna, if crime is growing, people aren't safe. Are people going to want to move to the county? I don't think so. And if they're not going to want to move to the county, guess what? It's going to hurt our housing values and things like that. And the majority of the people out here create their wealth. They generate the wealth in their home. And we've got to protect their home. We got to protect our home values and keep people coming. You can look at different sites and stuff and hear the news about crime, hear the news about stuff. And inflation. You talk about the inflation and tax. People have less money in their pocket, and the Board of Supervisors votes a 30% pay increase for themselves when nobody has enough money to pay for groceries and gas.
We're speaking with Keith Elliott. His website, by the way, keithforfairfax.com. That's the number for keithforfairfax.com. He's running for supervisors in the Sully District, where you live. In fact, you've lived there since the 80s. Because I see these Fairfax County either the Board of Education or county supervisors, I feel like the political activists on the left see these seats as sort of a revolving door escalator type thing for their political careers. You know, we'll start out in the Board of Education, then we'll get to Richmond, and then we'll run for higher office. They're not, I think, what you appear to be. You know, you've been in the private sector, you've lived your life, and now you want to spend some time serving the community on the Board of Supervisors because you want to fix the problems, not because you want to be governor, you know?
That's exactly right. I'll tell you, I'm the guy that's at a backyard barbecue talking to my neighbors about our tax assessment, and that's when this whole thing started. It was that weekend we're talking about it, and then I decided to make a few phone calls, met with Pat Harity, and here we are. I am not a politician. I never aspired to be one, but man, there's a big problem, and I am a citizen, and I want to make sure the county that I grew up in is the same county for my grandkids, and that's where I'm at.
So Keith, obviously this is going to be it could be a real tight race. What do you think is going to get you to the finish line here?
What's going to get me to the finish line? Let's see. A lot of things. First, we need volunteers to get at the polls, and if we can get every Republican out there to vote, let's just say we get 55 to 60% of the Republicans out there to vote, I think we flip the seat. This is off-year election, so normally it's about 30 to 35% of the people come out and vote. So we need everybody to get out and vote, and I think people should check out the website, you know, volunteer for me, donate for me, things like that. It's a seat that was a Republican seat years ago by Mike Fry. So it's actually winnable, and there's a great push from the Democrat side because of the land issues and these data centers and stuff that people are supporting me on.
Well, and the issue that you led with here with regard to taxes, I just want to dive into that a little bit more because sometimes the archaic machinations of how our counties operate and fund operations can sort of be lost on people. I think it's important to point out that it seems like the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors are constantly issuing new bonds and new bonds and new bonds, which is just a way to fund things that weren't properly planned and budgeted for years ago, right? If you're constantly going to the voters and asking to issue more bonds to fund things, which end up getting paid for by taxes in the long run, it just means that something's come up that you have to pay for that you didn't actually do anything about when you needed to budget and plan for it.
That's exactly right. I mean, all those things cost money in the long term, right? There's interest and everything else. So a project could be X amount of money, and then it's double the amount just because of these bonds or whatever it may be that they're trying to fix. I mean, I've managed budgets within associations, and associations have to call a reserve. They have to fund for these things. If they don't fund for it, guess what? Then there's a special assessment, and their association will be hurt by it. So it's the same principle. You got to fund for these things.
Yeah. Well, the sad fact is, and it brings me no joy to say it because these are our neighbors in Fairfax County and part of our community, but by every metric, Fairfax County seems to be in decline, from the schools to crime on the streets to the taxes to rising costs. It's just time for a change. There's been one-party domination there. And I think that, Keith, you're bringing some new ideas, which is exactly what that body needs. Keith Elliott, the website is Fairfax.com. Vote now. It's time. Voting is happening. Do it now. Follow Governor Glenn Youngkin's advice and secure your vote. Keith, thanks for joining us. Good luck in the home stretch.
Hey, thank you so much for your time, and God bless you guys.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnese Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
Quite possibly one of the most famous lines uttered in the 20th century was Neil Armstrong, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, right? I mean, it's right up there with Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. We have nothing to fear but fear itself.
Yes.
And ask not what you can do for your country. Or no, ask not what your country can do for you.
Let's stay away from the quotes.
Anyway, well, that's what Joe Biden's advisors should be telling him, because yesterday, as he was welcoming the Prime Minister of Australia to the White House, he said this.
Nearly 55 years ago, American astronauts took humanity's first step on the moon. They sent a message, forever etched in history. Quote, "That's one small step for man and one giant step for mankind."
Wait, no, that's not the quote. That's not the quote at all. It's one giant leap.
Quote,
"Quote,
"That's one small step for man and one
So wait,
giant
was he
step
like
for
on
mankind.
teleprompter?
Yes, I think it was. So do you think his staff is so ignorant that they didn't know the actual quote?
Gosh, I have no idea, but that's a great question. I mean, he can't get any. Joe can't get anything right. I mean, he just can't. It is
He's incapable
so
of it.
embarrassing. I mean, it's why he's been so absent on this and everything that's happening with the war in Israel. I mean,
please.
it's just such a disaster.
I wish he were absent. Instead, he says stuff like this yesterday.
I want to thank the Israelis and the Palestinian, and President.
What? He's
What?
thanking the Palestinians. I want to thank the Palestinians for the great work they've been doing. And wait, they're the murderers. What are you talking? He meant Egypt.
I want to thank the Israelis and the Palestinian, and President Sisi of Egypt
Oh,
for working
Lord.
with the United States to make sure that food, water, and medical supplies are getting through to innocent people.
Now you've worked for two presidents. You worked for President
Yes.
Trump. You worked for President George W. Bush. And do you remember? I'm sure you remember the Bush presidency where he was assailed with lampoons about all of it, all the gaffes. Oh, he can't read. He doesn't have a brain. He can't speak. He can't pronounce nuclear right. It's like it was insidious and ridiculous. Was it anything compared to this guy?
No, and I got to tell you, after 9/11, and there was one thing that I saw with President Bush is that he was razor focused on the war against terrorism and razor focused on taking down ISIS. Yeah. And so there was definitely a shift. And he really, I remember when he was talking about Osama bin Laden, wanted dead or alive, and he got plummeted for it. And I was like, no, we need to kill these terrorists. We have to get rid of them. And interestingly enough, to work under President Trump, we're, again, razor focused on eradicating ISIS. And here you have Joe Biden, who can barely put a sentence together, who, when he goes to the Middle East, the Arab leaders cancel the meetings with him, refuse to meet with him. They know for a fact that this is the weakest president, I think even weaker than Jimmy Carter, that we've had in America. Yeah. And they are taking advantage of this. And it's why we've seen such lukewarm reaction coming out of the Biden administration.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when you're the president, you can't deliver a clear, morally stalwart, strong message in the wake of the horrific terror attacks we saw in Israel, and then accidentally thank the Palestinians.
I want to thank the Israelis and the Palestinian, and President Sisi of.
It's beyond an embarrassment. It's dangerous.
Quote, that's one small step for man and one giant step for mankind.
It's time for a change, Mercedes.
Time for a change.
Yeah, honestly,
Let's
he's.
do it.
I can't believe I'm saying this. He's starting to make Kamala Harris look like a potential option.
Well, and the Kamala Harris numbers are horrible.
I know.
I mean, you're talking
That's how
over
bad it
70% of American voters do not want Kamala Harris. They are in a very, very tough position.
That's probably why Gavin
are.
Newsom is working on California's foreign policy over in China.
What a joke.
It's 7:21. A lot of things in life are uncertain, but one thing is certain. Mercedes, I don't know if you've noticed this social media trend, but it's disturbing and infuriating on multiple levels. What's happening is new parents with their little babies are posting these videos showing the babies crying endlessly. There's one video that showed this baby crying all through the night, and it had a little timestamp. Every hour the baby is crying. And first of all, it's and then they put a caption. Are you sure you want to have babies? Y'all really?
Gosh.
It's awful.
That's
it's
horrible.
anti-parenthood. It's and here's what's funny though. I bet if you see it, you will have the same reaction. Because my youngest is 16 now, and I look at those, and I started to get like, oh God, I wish I had a baby
I
again.
wish I had a little baby.
It's like it's not doing what they think it's doing.
I know.
What do you expect a baby? Of course, a baby's going to cry. And these miserable. But here's the other really. So that's infuriating. The whole intention of this is infuriating. But Matt Walsh pointed this out on one of these videos. Commentator at Daily Wire. He's like, why? What are they? Of course the baby isn't sleeping and crying. You've got all the lights on in the house so you can get a good video of the kid. All the lights are on because they want to make their viral video. You can't do that in the dark. How about you turn the lights out, put the camera down, and maybe then the baby will sleep? Honestly, these people who want to go viral, they probably poked the baby until it started crying just so they could get the video. Awful people.
Sorry, I have to laugh. I think, look, what's sad about this is people need to realize that when you have a newborn, you're not going to sleep. Like, it is not the way they put it in the films where the women have all this beautiful hair, their hair is done, they have makeup on, and, oh, it's a beautiful baby. It's so BS.
Yes.
Like, when you have a newborn, you're not going to sleep. You barely shower. It's tough as nails. But then you get through the initial 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and then it gets a little better. And you just have to sacrifice it and suck it up.
And then they're
These
teenagers.
Parents are so pathetic.
And then they're teenagers, and you lose sleep for a whole other reason. But, yeah, honestly, if you're looking for a solid night's sleep, there's two things you don't want to do. Have a lot of babies and get a job in morning radio. It's 7:30. Congressman Andy Harris is next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:36. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company this morning as we get you where you need to go and hopefully a little better informed and maybe even a little happier on your way to where you're going. At 8:05, we'll have the superintendent, of the Spotsylvania County Public Schools, Mark Taylor, talk about those school board elections coming up. And then at 8:35, Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform, will get his assessment of the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. I know Mercedes Schlapp, earlier we got your assessment based on the American Conservative Union's ratings, lifetime rating. Where is
He's
Johnson
at
again?
Mike Johnson is at 92% lifetime rating, solid conservative, and I think it's good to have someone ready to go and be strong on the principles that matter here in this country.
92% lifetime
92%.
conservative rating.
Larry, you would get 100.
I was going to say no. That's Andy Harris territory, is what that is. Representative Andy Harris, Republican from Maryland, the only sane, rational elected official in the entire state of Maryland, joins us now. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Good morning.
So, your assessment of Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House?
I think it's a great choice. It's a historic choice. Clearly, Mike is very different from what a lot of people in Washington expect a speaker to be, but that's because I think he's going to bring a new perspective. He's very conservative. He's very intelligent. He has been here long enough to know what needs to be changed.
If I can ask, I know we've talked about, Congressman, kind of the happy warrior in Mike Johnson, and he really seems to be the one to bring and unify the GOP conference. I got to ask you, how was the sausage made? That's like the big question. There was all this like back and forth. One member gets in. I felt like I was watching like an episode of like Survivor. Tell us, what was that defining moment that you knew, okay, Mike Johnson's going to be the next Speaker of the House?
Look, I think what happened is you realize that if you've been here long enough and you've been in leadership long enough, you've made enough enemies that you'll never get to 217 in a close majority.
Yes.
That's my new rule. And Mike has, again, because you're right, he is a happy warrior. There isn't anybody I've ever run into who said I don't like Mike Johnson. I mean, he's just a nice guy, and he's, as I said, he's very intelligent, very conservative. He chaired the Republican Study Committee, which is, of course, the largest caucus within the Republican conference. So he was well known to a lot of people.
So going forward now, he laid out his priorities in his remarks, and they were pretty clear. And as you say, Congressman Harris, they seem pretty conservative. What do you think the plan is going to be? Because that looming budget issue is still there. As we know, one of the arguments against Speaker McCarthy is that he just sort of compromised and kicked the can down the road with a continuing resolution. How do we fix this and actually get a real budget going for the next fiscal?
Well, I think the best indicator is that Mike was elected at around 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And by 4 o'clock, by 5 o'clock yesterday, we were already discussing an appropriations bill. He immediately brought one to the floor that was ready to go, and we're going to continue to do that. He has made it clear that our fiscal issues in this country are very serious. I think they originate with some out-of-control spending in Washington. He realizes that, and his first move, literally his first move as chair, as Speaker, was to bring the Israel resolution and then to immediately restart the appropriations process.
Cool.
Now, we're going to need another continuing resolution. There's no question about it. But while we're doing that, we are going to be passing our appropriations bills, hoping the Senate does the same, go to conference, do it the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, I mean, Congressman, obviously that's going to be the biggest fight, or the spending bill situation. I know that there's a lot of pushback from Republicans not to continue the just endless spending of the on the Ukrainian. And how do you think this is going to shake out in terms of what the priorities are going to be? Is it going to be Israel, border? Where are we? What do you think the Speaker and the Republicans are going to push forward?
Well, again, I think Speaker Johnson laid it out. One of the issues that he stressed was the border. I think that we have tremendous opportunity to hold this administration accountable for the border in these must-pass pieces of legislation. The supplemental bill, which I hope that we offset with savings from the Inflation Reduction Act and other COVID monies that aren't unspent. The continuing resolution, the appropriations bills, we have numerous points of leverage to hold this administration accountable to close that southern border.
Congressman, one other question here, and it's because you're in close proximity to the nation's capital, and I know that the machinations of district council politics and how the district is run has always been at the top of your list of concerns. The crime issue continues to plague this federal city, and the mayor attempted to make a lot of noise saying that she was going to be tough on crime, and she proposed rolling back a lot of the disastrous measures they put forth back in 2020 to undermine policing and law enforcement. Do you think there's a stomach right now in the House of Representatives to bear down on the district and really call into question whether home rule is still a feasible option, and maybe bring the leadership and oversight of this city back under the auspices of Congress?
I think there really is. I think that, look, we've given the District of Columbia a fairly long time to show whether home rule works or not. And I think crime is the number one way to determine whether a local government is working or not, because everybody deserves security in their homes, security when they go out on the streets, security when they go shopping. And to be honest with you, there are a growing number of people who feel that they just can't go, they can't go anywhere in the District of Columbia because they don't feel secure. That's a primary failure of government. I think there is appetite to begin to rein in the D.C. government in areas where it fails. And if that takes a major change to the home rule, then so be it.
Congressman Andy Harris, Dr. Harris, always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's 7:43. It's time for Critter News. We've got some good Critter News. It's a follow-up to a follow-up of Critter News. But I want to start, Mercedes Schlapp, by telling you, did you see, I was like so excited and bragging this morning when we did our pre-show meeting because I got fan letters.
I know, it's so sweet.
I got fan letters from Ivy and Ella, and Ivy's came in this sparkly rainbow unicorn envelope.
So
sweet. When I come to the office and I get a little envelope addressed in a sparkly unicorn rainbow envelope, I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous to open it. But in this case, it was from Ivy. But both of these fan letters and their sisters, they said, I really like listening to your show. I usually listen to it with my mom and siblings on the way to school. I especially like Critter News. Right there.
Critter News is the best.
That's from Ella. And Ivy says, I love your show. We listen to it 2 times a day. 2 times a day.
2 times a day?
And I especially like Critter News. Critter News is a big favorite with apparently elementary school girls. So So Ella and
So
Ivy.
what's our critter news today?
This critter news is dedicated to Ella and Ivy, and thank you for those very sweet letters. This is a follow-up on that we told you earlier in the week. You remember the lost zebras, the zebras in Upper Marlboro that escaped. And you remember this is the contemporary. This was how it was reported locally.
Then I called 311.
What did they say?
Oh, she thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
She thought I was crazy. She paused for a long minute. I said, ma'am, I'm not drinking. I have not had any drugs. I had zebras in my backyard walking on a train track. And
You do have to lay that out there because generally you don't see zebras. Well, the Washington Post put together a crack investigative journalism team.
Ooh, yes,
They
because they're
invested
so reliable.
a ton of money on this to try to get the wrongdoings of this zebra owner that kept zebras. Did you know that he had like over 30 zebras? I didn't know
yes,
that.
we were astounded by the number. It was 39 zebras.
39 zebras. You know what they refer
it's
to
like
that?
I guess it's like having cattle or something, right?
That would be a herd
Or
of
39
cattle,
horses.
right? And you've got a gaggle of geese. You've got a school of fish. But what do you call a group of zebras?
I know I learned this today with you. A
It's
dazzle.
A dazzle. A dazzle of zebras.
Dazzle of zebras.
Dazzle of zebras.
Yes.
It sounds
So
like a
fun.
show tune of some kind that I
It
should
does.
know
I feel
from a
like they're going to
Broadway
all break out in like Broadway musical
with
tunes.
yeah, they don't have fingers,
dazzle
otherwise
of
they would.
zebras.
They
That
have
makes-
jazz hooves, I think, when they're a dazzle of zebras.
Sparkle.
Whoever came up with the name Dazzle of Zebras probably also uses rainbow sparkly unicorn stationery, and he's not a 7-year-old girl.
I
But
kind of like it. I like the dazzle.
moving on about this dazzle of zebras, the Washington Post really came down with this expose on the owner and painted this guy like he's Al-Qaeda. It's ridiculous. Well, anyway, he did finally have his day in court, and guess what? He was acquitted. Jerry
course.
Lee Holly, the guy who keeps a dazzle of zebras in Upper Marlboro, in fact, did not break any laws.
Yeah. No, you have state prosecutors going after him, and the judge dismissed this case.
The case has been
because
dismissed.
the state prosecutors failed to meet a burden of proof. I mean, come on, seriously.
The good news is, and I did some research here. Apparently, in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, in Prince George's County, there, crime is so low that the quality of life is fantastic. There's no debris on the streets. There's no homeless. There's no criminal
Well, are there
vagrants.
more zebras than people there?
There's
Is that
no
what it
drug
is?
dealers. There's no violent crime. Prince George's County is so pristine that they could spend their time and their money through the state's prosecutors going after the guy who keeps a dazzle of zebras in his rural farmland there.
I think the zebras should start voting at this point. Seriously.
Wait a second. I'm being informed that, in fact, crime is a major problem in Prince George's County. And actually, there is a major problem with criminal vagrancy and people living on the streets. And maybe the state's attorney should focus on that instead of our dazzle of zebras.
Our dazzle of zebras. I know.
Whom we love. Not as much
Free
as
the
we love
zebras.
Ivy and Ella, though, for their letter. You can send us letters, too, and
So sweet.
it's 7:53.